Hello and welcome to MudderRucker and the Interpro show. It's a collab again as we cover the second round of the 2026 Interpros. I'm Ailbhe O'Nolan.
And I'm Cian O'Mullor.
And joining us again is the totally unbiased fence sitter, Caolán Scully. Welcome, Caolán.
How are you? If I had €1 for every time I was called a fence sitter this week, I'd probably have €3 actually, which is a different story. Yeah, like you wouldn't get a pint for it, but look, we'll manage.
Do you go with a Ron Seal stain on that now, or would you be more of a kind of an outside paint, white paint, just subtle last?
I mean, I could give you the colour, but I think that would cause more carnation.
I love it. So we saw round 2 of the Interpros this weekend gone. There was no real upset. Leinster grew into the competition. I think we kind of predicted that last week. They found their flow a little bit and beat Connacht, and then Munster continued their total domination as they completely shut out Ulster. But before we get into any of the match stuff, I want to talk a little bit about the central contracts that were announced last week. The RFU announced, I think it was 31 central contracts, with, I believe, 7 uncapped players. And it's an interesting selection, Caolán.
Yeah, it is. And I'm literally typing as we go, trying to get the full list up in front of me. It is an interesting list because it has gone down. And I think you can look at that, and a lot of people will be quite critical of that. I understand why. But I think the brass tacks and the unfortunate reality of it is it's gone down potentially with 7 specialists. And we've seen an increase in forwards. And I'm just realizing, I wrote the article last week, so it's actually very easy for me to come find it now that I think of it. No, it is a weird one in that regard, because it clearly shows that the focus is shifting. I don't have the players who dropped off. The central contract coming on was Sophie Barrett, Kate Jordan, Ailbhe McGrath, and Ailbhe Cahill. Very good. I actually forgot that Ailbhe McGrath was Ballincollig until he came up at the press conference today. And Linda Jugan, of course, the other high profile player to step back onto one, having stepped off one after the World Cup. It looked like maybe that was her being phased out, or maybe going back to work a little bit more or whatever. So I think that one's probably the more interesting one that Linda Jugan's on there. But the fact that it is more forwards heavy, 13 forwards, 18 backs, and of those 18 backs, I think like 6 are back 3 alone. I have it in alphabetical order, which doesn't help me for counting that. But it is an interesting squad, as I was saying. A lot of youth in there. Like there's Jemima Adams-Verling, Beth Buttimer, someone else, Katrina Finn. She was under 21 this year. Lucia Lynn was under 21 this year. Eilish Quinn was under 21 last year. Chisholm was under 21 this year, albeit from over age. Ailbhe McGrath was under 21 this year. There's a lot of youth in there. Robin O'Connor was as well, actually, technically, even though she was the breakout star of the Six Nations. So there's a lot of youth, a lot of experience, and a lot of forwards. And I like it. I like the mix. I think it is quite deep when you kind of roam through it. And I'm going to pull that up when whoever answers after me decides to weigh in, and I'll just be pulling that up in the meantime. But I like it. I like the direction in which it's going. Would I like to see more contracts? Yes, I would. But at the same time, if Niamh O'Dowd, Brittany Hogan, Aoife Wafer, Adele McMahon, Sam Monaghan were at home, would they have contracts? They would. So maybe this is just a kind of more of a reality check of where the depth is at. Not saying that someone like, at a same level couldn't be close, but maybe it's just as simple as that. Sometimes, as they say, the simplest answer is the one straight in front of your face. But definitely on the whole, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think we're kind of is it a luxury? I don't know, when we can outsource a lot of our forwards to the PWR. It's great in terms of them getting a whole load of experience. It's great in terms of them competing against who we will compete with at an international level, because they, it's not just England. They have a lot of the Italian, some French, there's Scottish, Welsh. There's a huge mix of players there. But it is great to see, like you said, there is a lot of young players there that have come up from the under-20s. The likes of Beth Buttimer, she went to the World Cup, wasn't capped. We had a lot of depth, though, at hooker. But it's good to see that she's still in the mix there. The likes of Ivana Kiripati kind of came and went. She may get her chance again, but she's not currently in the mix. For me, the disappointment, I think, is probably the Enya Breen exclusion. And I think she's a really talented player. She's a very good utility kind of halfback / centre. But Caolán, do you think she's a little bit lost in terms of her position? You know, Eve Higgins seems to be our 12. It's very hard for her to push Eve Higgins out. Dana O'Brien is our 10 with some depth coming through and the likes of Katrina Finn. It's kind of hard for her to really kind of narrow down a position.
Yeah, it is. And I actually thought Enya played very well at the weekend, and we'll get on to it a little bit later on. I thought she was very, very good. But you look at it, as you said, there's two out halves, Katrina Finn and Dan O'Brien. That was nailed on. Like, if you put the mortgage on it last week, you know, it would have been a safe bet. And there's 5 centres: Eve Higgins, Hannah Clark, Aoife Dalton, Lucia Lynn, and I have Alana McInerney down as a centre. She's really more of a hybrid option. I think centre could be her long-term position. But I think for Enya, and I think someone like, say, Maeve Deely falls into that bracket as well, where it's like, if we keep seeing one of them as your utility option that can play out half, that can play elsewhere in squads, I don't mind. Like, Enya is going coaching this season as well. She's signed up as a player coach at Bellevue, I think it is. She's left Blackrock to go to Bellevue, or is it?
Yeah. Correct.
So she has the expertise, she has knowledge, she has the experience. I would still like to see her involved. I'd like to see her involved with County Challenge. And I thought what we saw at the weekend, yeah, there was definitely times where timing errors were off and a few little skill set errors, but I thought she linked play a lot better than she had done a week before. I thought she took on more of the onus. And I actually think, in plain and simple terms, because Katrina Finn plays 10, like 90% of the time, she didn't look any worse than Katrina Finn did in the exact same game, even though the game opened up in the second half, which was bound to happen. And I think that's really testament to Enya and her quality, that she can, you give her a game, yes, she finds her feet, but she'll get back into it. Now, it's a while since she's got consistent test minutes, it should be said, but still, at the same time, if I'm looking through those centre-less, like Nancy McGillivray is another player over in PWR, like, she's going to be in Ireland squads for years to come. I think Lynn and McInerney are playing very well. I think Dalton and Higgins are the established pair, and I have it somewhere else if I can find it. Like Anna McGann has played centre as well. She played centre at the weekend. Katrina Finn has played a bit of 12. So I don't think centre is a problem position, so I understand the selection. But I think if it was a 35-player squad or list squad, I don't know. I think maybe she'd be closer to that. But I'd still like to see her involved, because ultimately, as we talked about last week, we don't want to have it's 2 10s, but it's only one situation. We want to have every player pushing the other. Do you know?
One other person before we move on to the games that I'm really happy to see included in the squad is Jane Neal, who of course captained the under-20s, I think the year before last. A really talented player. I think she's gone through a bit of injury recently, so we haven't heard a lot from her, but great to see that she's in the mix, getting a central contract. And, you know, I'd say she's going to be one to watch in the future in terms of her development. I mean, she was 19 years of age and I was looking up at her, kind of straining my neck. You know, she's a big forward. I'm 5'3" on a good day, like. 5'3.5" in the morning.
I'm not here to make jokes about height, so I'm just going to stay out of this conversation.
That's fair. But yeah, it's great to see her in the mix, and great to see so much development potentially of players, and a little bit of consistent development with some people being included and re-included. You know, 3-4 years ago, we were looking at a squad that going into the Six Nations had like double figure caps between them. It was, I think there was like the average amount of caps was 6 caps per player of the Six Nations squad, which is just unheard of. But I think that was kind of the squad being decimated after a very poor period, and, you know, the letter of protest. And now we're looking at the build kind of, you know, go to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. So it's great to see. So we'll have a quick look at the games of the weekend.
I might just jump in before we move on, because I have the squad in kind of position order, and it might help tell a better picture. So you've got Sive McGrath, Linda Jugang, Sophie Barrett and Eilish Cahill as the 4 props. I think going forward, Sive McGrath's going to be looked at as a loose head. I think the tight head thing is kind of past, for lack of a better word. I think we're going to see her more loose head. Beth Buttimer is the only century contracted hooker, but of course, Niamh Jones, Clean and Ronnie McDonald are both PWR players. Ruth Campbell, Fiona Tudor-Sullivan, Ailbhe McGrath, Kate Jordan in the second row. Again, Sam Monaghan and Dorothy Waller both over in PWR. Jemima Adams-Verling, Ailish Quinn, Erin King and Jane Neal are the back rows. You have, again, Wall could be considered, Adele McMahon, Brittany Hogan, Aoife Wafer, Grace Moore, another one who could be considered PWR. We don't know her exact status. Katie Whelan, Aoife Riley, Emily Lane. I think that's probably the strongest position group, if I'm being entirely honest. Trina Finn and Dan O'Brien. There's no Irish halfbacks in PWR, but we do have Molly Scuff and McCabe, who's still down in New Zealand. Their season is just finished, so I don't know the exact status. Eve Higgins, Hannah Clark, Aoife Dalton, Lucia Lynn, and Lana McInerney, with Nancy McGillivray over in PWR. You got whopping 8 players in the back three: Emily Costigan, Ellen Boylan, Chisholm Maguire, Robin O'Connor, Bevan Parsons, Anna McGann, Vicky Elms-Kinlan, and Stacey Flood. And Niamh Gallagher is over in PWR as well, in terms of players who've been on the radar. So when you look at it like that, and you break it down, and you look at who's not in there. I think Siobhan McCarthy's close to another cap, Jane Chauncey, Claire Bowles could slot in, tomorrow if you asked her to. Aoife Corey, Katie Corrigan, Enya Breen, who we mentioned, Maeve Deely, Kate Flannery. Like, there's a lot of talent who are not in this, or who may not be in PWR either. So I do think the depth is there. Like, that's one thing. I think it does highlight the depth is still there. Yes, the number has gone down, but I'm still pretty happy with where it's at. And actually, one player I forgot to mention, or 2 players I forgot to mention, Niamh O'Dowd is PWR, and Roisin Maher as well as someone to watch. She had a brilliant under-21 Six Nations. Like, she was fantastic in those games. And like you talk about age profile, I think it's all in a very nice spot, if I'm entirely honest. And then, you do have the slightly older heads of, Fiona Tudor-Sullivan and Emily Costigan to look after the rest of them. But I think it's in a great position. When you read it like that, when you see it like that, you look, it's not too bad. We'd love to have 40, 50 players on central deals, but that's not feasible for 40 or 50 players to be in Dublin three mornings a week,
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of competition kind of in or around camp. You'd love to just watch the training sessions. I'd say they go hammer and tongs at each other. Really interesting when you first said Emily Costigan, I initially went, she's just had her twins, probably not yet. And then I thought, she's a machine. She could be back in 4 or 5 weeks. Like
it doesn't mean she'll play.
Nothing. I would put nothing past that woman, like, honest to God. Like, some of the stuff I saw on her socials while she was pregnant, and twins, she was very pregnant, and the stuff she's doing in the HPU, I was just like, my God, she put me to shame. I was on the couch eating chocolate the whole time. She's some woman. Anyway, so games of the weekend then. Munster faced Ulster in their last home game of the Interpros down in Cork. Caolán, we spoke last week about Ulster maybe lacking a playmaker. We spoke about their leadership. Claire Bowles is a net captain, and she's very good at that. But the playmaker role just seems to be missing. And it was very evident on Saturday for me. Ulster really failed to threaten Munster in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, they did, unfortunately, and they didn't really fire a shot. Now, in fairness, and I would agree with this as well, as Niamh Briggs said, Ulster had a lot of possession that second half. They did have an awful lot of ball, especially after Munster kind of emptied their bench with about 20, 25 minutes to go. I think the flip side of that is they didn't really look like scoring. Now, that's twofold. I think Munster's defence has been fantastic. They bring a level of aggression that would be adored by certain people who've been on this podcast. I'm sure about that, but you're right. They haven't really shown a whole pile, and you can pick out certain performances. I thought, like, I did actually think Fiona O'Sullivan was actually a lot more busy in this game than she was maybe the week before. That was her first game back from injury, but that backline just didn't really get going. I know Siobhan Sheeran wasn't there, and she's the one player that Maeve O'Leary name checked from the year before, that she like really caused them problems, and that's important too. Like, I think if you even look at Leinster, if you took Aoife Higgins out of the Leinster team, would they look different? They would. Do you know? I think Siobhan Sheeran has that level of influence. Look, there is quality there. They'll grow, but we're going to be having the same conversation for a number of years, I feel like, because ultimately a lot of that Ulster squad are not playing top level AIL rugby, and as we know, and we can discuss the upsides and the downsides of Celtic Challenge and AIL. We can do that every week of every year for 10 years. It's not going to change drastically overnight. But I think that is an issue. And I think Connacht is actually a good place to look at the map, because Connacht are without a couple of internationals at the moment. And they are just looking like that kind of slight level below, like mid-table AIL, where a lot of their players play with, say, Wegians, for example. And if they had that extra bit of quality, they'd be a little bit better off. And I think with Ulster, if they had maybe 5 or 6 more players who were based with a Railway, a Blackrock, a Belvedere. I know it's a long way from Belfast to Limerick. A UL Bulls. It's a long way from Galway to Belfast. I've done that trip before a few times. But if they had that, I think you'd start to see it naturally develop. But ultimately, you are as good as your surroundings in this game. I do think that's kind of the main thing. I don't think Ulster look badly coached. I don't think they look miles and miles off it. Yes, Munster scored 60 points. But Munster scored 60 points because they were already on top. They had the bonus point. They brought on someone like Katrina Finn, who just said, I'm going to run this show. And I actually thought she was... I didn't phrase it right before. I think in some ways Katrina Finn was better this week than she was the week before. But maybe relative to the opposition, maybe she wasn't. You know, that kind of way. That's the only discrepancy. But I think for Ulster, it will take a while. And as we kind of mentioned, you know, if an Irish team goes into PWR, it's not going to be Ulster, unfortunately. I mean, maybe you could do something because of, you know, tax and wages and all that kind of stuff. But they do look a bit off. I'd like to see how they get on the final. You know, you've got a home game now, reset, give it a crack against Leinster. Leinster just need to win and they'll be in the final. Then you're going down to Galway, you have a chance to spoil the party. They've done well against Connacht in recent years, especially in games that have opened up. You know, that's why Connacht were so happy to get the win in a hard-fought game, because they've been ones that haven't happened. They've had an awful lot of open games. Give it a crack in the Dexcom, see how it goes. And you never know. And if they come third, you won't be able to say that they didn't deserve it, you know, because they'll have to beat Galway and Connacht, beat Connacht in Galway to do so. So if it happens, you know, there's still a chance that Connacht win this weekend and Leinster lose, and you know, as well. I should say
possible.
that. Journalistic
Yeah.
angle, I have to say that as well.
Cian, just going to come to you. You talked about kind of the competition last week. You know, Ulster have not had any win for years. They had a draw in the last while. Do you think it's damaging to the competition to have a team that's, you know, consistently last?
I mean, it's not great for any competition to have a team that's consistently losing, but there's always going to be a team that's losing in any competition, and it's a hard one to fix. I mean, they get around it in the States by doing drafts and the like, but you know, here people have rights instead, so you can't really do that.
Safe food.
Yeah, so you know, it isn't great, but there's no immediate fixtures. There's no easy fix to it. I mean, you could put the best coaches in the world up there. It's still going to take the guts of 5 to 10 years, really, to bring through a team. Like, unless you stack all the best players in from all the other provinces in the PWR, and you put the best coaches in there and literally artificially generate. But that's not going to do anything for Ulster as a province, as a feeder team, like, because then when that goes, you're left with the same players that you had in the first place, and they've had no experience, they've had no game time, they've had no quality coaching. So you can't just put a Band-Aid on it. It is going to be consistently investing in Ulster and Connacht over time. And you are starting to see the green shoots in Connacht. I mean, we've said that last week, and we'll get into it a bit more now. They are starting to get there, starting to hum a little bit. And I think we can get there with Ulster as well, but it is just consistently supporting them and bringing them through. And it's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be pretty in the meantime. And yes, they're probably going to be lost in the competition this year. They're probably going to be lost in the competition next year. Year after, maybe not. Who knows? But it's you're talking in a scale of seasons rather than games.
Yeah. And I think you've hit the nail. Sorry,
I was just going to say it takes time, because even like if you talk to Sana Govender or Craig Hansbury or Matt Brown, they will always mention how important the NTS is and how important those under-18 competitions are, and maybe giving a player a year or two before they step up into the senior team, like say, as Sally Kelly, for example, or a couple of the Munster front rowers. I think all the Munster front rowers were debutants the first day, if not close to it. Like, it takes a while to get up to speed. Ulster don't really have that luxury. And I think the one thing I will say is they've named a bigger squad this year. Previously, they would be naming one of the smaller squads. I think they are starting to see that. I think there's a little bit more joined up thinking, but it takes a while. That doesn't mean they'll never get there. If they can produce Brittany Hogan's and Claire Bowles's pretty much the same age, they can continue to do that, but it takes a while. And I think they will get there. I think the right investment will help. And, we keep talking about, Wolfhounds, PWR, provincial, whatever. Like, if for the provincial game it meant we're going to send one or two extra players up to Ulster, I would be in favour of that. We mentioned Kate Flannery last week, other players who were Dublin based, just because it's a little bit easier. Not going to ask someone from Cork to move up to Belfast. But if that's what it takes, let's move in that direction. Even if it is, say, some of the under 21s, and you go maybe that route, just to kind of see. I know it's a little bit tricky with physicality and everything, but just if we work on it, they have the rugby IP. Like, you have got, Eric O'Sullivan was previously involved. James Hume is in there now. Murray Houston is a good coach. Like, they have the rugby IP, but it just takes time. It just takes time. It's not that long ago that Connacht were struggling to beat them, and then at the same week would probably beat Leinster a week later. Like, Connacht were in a very similar position. Ulster a little bit behind that, but that'll probably be the next step, where they'll be consistently one or two with Connacht, and then kind of putting it up to the other provinces. This year's going to feel like a step back, unfortunately, but the fixture list and your run of games and who gets injured when, that's important too. Fiona Tudor Sullivan being, this kind of being her first game back doesn't help, even though she played better this week, in fairness, but that doesn't help either. It takes time. All these things take time.
Yeah, it really does. And, I think, you can't really ask questions of the players that are there. Again, it harps back to kind of 2023 with the Irish players. People asking questions of the players and their dedication, who are the ones that are running out on the pitch every day. You can't ask the questions of those. They are there. They're dedicated. They're doing absolutely the best they can within their means, but it's how well they're supported, how well they're financed, what the conditions are. There's so much more, and the pathways that they've developed are crucial. We talk about training age of players. Training age of some players at kind of a high level is actually quite low. You can't expect, them to be the greatest player in the world if there isn't that pathway for them to play a lot of rugby early on in their development and build into kind of a senior role. To focus on the game just a little bit, Munster scored 10 tries, Caolán, relatively well spread across the squad. Are there any players in particular that stood out to you?
1 to 23, Anna. I think.
Only 23.
Jeez,
who had Caolán name checks the entire team on their bingo card? Who had that one? Who had that score?
To be fair, right, I could genuinely go 1 to 15 and list out good performances. Even someone like Susan McGuire, who came off early, thought she was playing very, very well. She was a handful. She will get capped for Ireland. She will.
Yeah.
It's a matter of when, not if.
I think a handful is a perfect way to describe her.
How do you tackle her? She's stronger than you and she's faster than you. Like, we haven't seen this on the wings since Bevan Parsons, who was very, very similar. Granted, she was a bit younger when she burst on the scene. But I'll start with my favourite area of the pitch, the front row. I think Munster front row has been excellent. Not going to mention the tight head prop, because we do too much on the Munster tight head prop. Siobhan McCarthy
it's a
was
rule.
very, very good.
She has to be mentioned.
She has to be mentioned in the race once. Eilish Cahill is class. Eilish Cahill.
Oh, was Eilish Cahill was playing a tie? Oh, okay.
Yeah, never heard of her. Never heard of her.
Oh, yeah.
Keane playing dumb. That's sure. Look, I'm going to be bold here. That's the form front row in Ireland right now. I know it's only been 2 games, but I'm counting the last while. Siobhan McCarthy, Beth Buttimer, Eilish Cahill. Beth is playing incredible. Shout out to Beth, who turns 21 today. I know that because Niamh Briggs mentioned it on today's press conference.
Yay! Happy birthday.
Frankly insane. Like, she's way too good to be only just turned 21 at a position where maturity, Like, how often do you see a hooker come into their role at like 23, 24? Do you know what I mean?
Her skill set is so good. Like her darts are incredible. Scrum time's incredible. She gets around the pitch. Yeah, eye for the try line. She's just so good. Her ruck work is incredible. Her tackling is brilliant. Wouldn't want to be hit by her in a month. Sundays. She's got so much talent for such a young player.
She really does. And I think she has been, like, she's top try scorer in the competition so far. And the little notes thing that I did up, if you read them, you'd know this as well. I'm sure you did read them. I'm sure we all did our research before the podcast. She has scored 6 tries. And of those 6 tries, top try scorer by a distance. And of those 6 tries, she didn't score in the second half the last day. That's over 3 halves of rugby. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is frankly insane, you know. Funnily enough, the second top point scorer in the competition is Maeve Deedy with 11, and Beth Buttimer is 30 points across 2 games, which is just insane. Anyways, this is not the Beth Buttimer Irish Cahill hour. Moving on to Jane Clossley, who I mentioned the last day, I thought she had a very good game. So Eva Flynn, I think she's someone who's really, really grown into that position. I think Munster are going to turn around in a year's 2 time when, say, if someone like Clodagh O'Halloran retires or steps away, or Maeve Ogue, and they're going to be looking, they're going to be like, geez, these players were replaced. How do we manage this? But we'd never replace them. Do you know, because Maeve Ogue didn't play this game either, and I thought Grace Moore was as good as I've seen her in a long, long time. And that's not to say she didn't play badly. She was dominant. Emily Lane, arguably, I would have said arguably the form 9 in the country. And then Ailbhe Riley went and did what she did. So
yeah,
I'm gonna put that one on pause. I do want to mention the Munster centres though. I think Lane and McInerney are real quality operators. I think they're playing very, very good rugby at the moment. McInerney, she has that telepathy anyway, believe for Corey, who's always behind her, because they don't leave each other's side by their own admission on a podcast. They don't, you know, where one goes, the other one goes. But they play so well together. And I think McInerney suits the type of game plan that Lynn brings, because Lynn is the type of player that she can pass, she can run, she can step, I don't know if she kicks much, but she can do a little bit of everything. You have to sit back. And when you've got someone like Alana McInerney, we seen it the first day with her try against Leinster. The first game, you give her half an inch, she's going to make a yard. You give her 2 yards, she's going to make 5 yards. And I would like to see someone like her fast-tracked into an Ireland cap. And you'll probably talk about it with Chloe or with myself or with a special guest closer to the WXV games. Like, I'd be looking at those games and I'd be looking at someone like Alana McInerney and I'm like, right, let's get her game time. Do you know? And looking at different players like that. And just finally, like, a very young Munster bencher. Shout out to Andrea Murphy, who scored on her debut, which is always pretty cool. A very young Munster bench, but Jenny Katrina Finn, like, we can't not say it. She is playing brilliant rugby. She has been playing brilliant rugby for a long time now, even with the injuries. By her own admission, her kicking probably could have been a little bit better at times. You know, that happens. But the try that she created, which was, I think it was scored by Emily Lane in the end. It's been a while since we've had a 10 who could do that. Do you know, like, probably since Niamh Briggs was at 10 is probably the last time we could have an Irish 10 who would be given a yard of space, dart through and tee up a very simple try. She's deceptively tall, like, rangy type of player. I think she's playing really well. And I think Munster, and I've said this before, if Munster don't win it this year, it'll either be because Leinster really click into gear in the final or Munster underperform. I think they are remarkably the best team. I think they play a brand of rugby that suits the women's game currently, as I spoke about last week. And I think they are comfortably the best team through the first 2 games. That's not to say they won't lose this week. They could. But I think they are a level above at the moment. I think they look very well coached, and not just saying that because of who coaches them, but I genuinely, I do believe that.
I think for me, the Munster team, you look from 1 to 23 and everybody's a grafter. You know, there's nobody there that's kind of, you know, there for a bit of show, or there's nobody there that's kind of, you know, got a very narrow role in what they do. They're all grafters. I was watching Chiz Maguire in that first half, and the amount of rucks that woman went into, and with a ferocity, like, okay, she didn't get the ball. She's like, well, then my job is to ruck, and she's in there and she's absolutely hammering people in it. And she was very kind of, you know, I've complained a bit in recent years of the Irish wings not coming off their wing. Chisholm was only on her wing half the time. You know, she was offering herself up everywhere. But the team from 1 to 23, they are grafters. I think Clodagh O'Halloran and probably Sally Kelly were a complete example of that at the weekend. The shift of work. I'd love to see some of the stats, you know, in terms of how much of the grass they covered or how many rucks they entered. I'd say it was, you know, phenomenal. Really, really hard work from them all. And I think, you know, you talk about, you know, if Leinster win, I just don't see it happening. I just don't see Munster being beaten. I don't see anybody coming within 15 points of Munster.
If they keep
even on
playing
their
the way
best
they
day.
are, if they keep playing the way they are, no one will. And like they still have Maeve O'Leary to come back from a knock. We're not expected to be too serious. Whether or not she trains tonight, I don't know. I'm not there. This is the UL. But like they still have her to come back in there. Like that's a scary prospect because Maeve Og was very, very good against Leinster, admittedly kind of on one leg. And I the one thing I can't get past is Munster do look better coached than everyone else. And you can talk about ability, you can talk about work ethic, grafters. Absolutely. I'm not disagreeing. But I think in terms of what does the women's game reward at this moment in time, that's kind of how Munster is set up. And I made the comment to a friend of mine, like, look at Ailbhe Cian as an example. She could be our Sarah Byrne. You know what I mean? Like Munster's back three selection and how they play is similar to the Red Roses. And if we're being honest, the Red Roses dictate how everyone else plays rugby. Kind of like the All Blacks when they were in their prime. You know, that's how these things happen. And I think Munster are the closest to that. And my fear, and I said this last day, and I think this did rear its ugly head at times in Donnybrook the other day, is that at times Leinster do look like the worst version of Ireland when Ireland just can't get at it going. Munster don't look like that. Munster do kind of look more French-English, where it's like, yeah, they'll make mistakes. And actually, I think the French comp is probably better in some ways because the only times Munster have not looked like scoring over the last 2 weeks is when they were their own worst enemy. Do you know? And that's probably the one thing that's been the one lifeline when you've played the French in particular over the last 2 years. Like, they might throw it forward. Be grand. Do you know what I mean? They might fuck it up. And they have, from time to time, they have. Until we went to Claremont and kind of did that. But that's a different conversation. Yeah. I'm still not over that game.
I think that, you know, for me, looking at the difference between Munster and Leinster, Munster are, I've overused this word, but it's perfect for them. They're just cohesive in every way. They work together as a unit. And, you know, you had Grace Moore on the podcast and you were asking her about how, you know, how hard or how easy is it to just slot in to a system like that. And, you know, she spoke about, you know, she cares about the detail, but I also wonder, is it such a well-oiled machine that it's very clear to communicate, this is your job in this area, this is your job in this area. And, you know, it's kind of beautiful in its sometimes lack of complexity in terms of how it's communicated to these players. Sadie Kelly as well, 1 year in the AIL with Ennis, and she's slotting in, and my God, she's you know, you wouldn't take the jersey off her. She's performing so well. You know, is the way Munster operates such a solid unit and so well communicated and so well supported from player to player, all the players around each other. And I wonder, is that what's missing at Leinster? They have some of the most talented players in the country on paper and some of the most talented players we've ever seen in an Irish shirt. But are they working more as individuals and less as a unit, or are they lacking that cohesion somehow? And it just doesn't quite seem to be clicking. Cian, we'll move on to that Leinster game. We did say that they are starting to click that little bit more. But at times they did make it hard on themselves. I think the scoreline probably somewhat flatters them. It was neck and neck throughout the game. They pulled away at the end. Realistically, it was a tighter game. What did you make of that Leinster performance?
Yeah, it was pretty tight. And I think that, probably Leinster, in fairness, were probably their own worst enemies because they pretty much let Connacht in for the first 3 tries. Twice around the ruck, and the third time was poorly connected off of a Connacht scrum. Honestly, the tries that they did get, they didn't have to work too hard for. There were kind of moments of individual brilliance from Connacht players that got them through each time. And Leinster had to go work quite hard for their own scores. They were pretty much team scores each time. There was a nice maul try in there, which was one of the occasions that the line out worked. In fairness, the set piece was better than it was last weekend, certainly. But they both had to warm up throughout the course of the game. The scrum was okay at the start, but definitely got the upper hand as the game went on. The line out was again up and down, and it again improved as the game went on. But you are seeing that kind of slow to hit the road again, and kind of cost them early doors, and there was one of the reasons why it was so tight in the first half. Another big problem was the kicking. We're not going to get away from that one. Dan O'Brien, both from the tee and from hand, was played off the park, frankly, by her incredibly young opposite number in Connacht, who, had the result been a bit different, could have been looking at her second player of the match in 2 weeks. It's not a great scene to see your international starting out half being outplayed like that by a fairly promising young player, but a young player nonetheless.
She does, Dana does seem a little bit off the boil, and I don't know what it is exactly. But I think it's probably...
I have a theory, and I may have touched on it last week.
Go on.
But I do have concerns about the not professional players, the essentially contracted players taking a while to hit the ground running when it comes to after a long layoff. Be it when Ireland played before the World Cup, before the Six Nations, granted that was a little bit different, but there is a bit of a gap there. Before Six Nations in the past, this time around, there seems to be a bit of a trend that they're kind of struggling to hit the ground. And I actually think Dana had some nice touches in this game and kind of plodded her way around and got through it and grew into it and got better and better as the game went on. And I'll defend her on that. But I just have this concern that because pre-season is so about rehab and injuries right and learnings and all that kind of stuff, that maybe that's taken away from the genuine level of match readiness that they have. And I would be concerned if in 12 months' time, Ireland go into a WXV game, for example, in 12 months' time, and you're looking at them and you're like, just they come in cold again. I don't think it'll happen this year because it's not the worst WXV slate with USA, Japan, twice, South Africa. But I just have a little bit of concern that if that's New Zealand, Canada, for example, that we're like, it's too cold, and you get another Red Roses situation where Twickenham, where Ireland just did show up in the first half, and you're your own worst enemy, and that's not any one thing. That's not just Scott Beeman. That's not just SNC. That's because of injuries as well and clean-up surgeries and all that happens. But it is a concern of mine that the longer we go into this, the more it continues, the more it'll continue to be a concern. And I want to see Irish players hitting the ground running. I want to see them ready, especially internationals. That wasn't the case down in Cork last week either. And yes, Leinster grew into this game. Aaron King, who I didn't think had a great game down in Cork, was player of the match in this one. Dan O'Brien grew into this game. Stacey Flood, this was her first game back. She did well. I don't think she was exceptional. I don't think she was player of the match. I think Aaron King was fully deserving, but she played well. Which kind of goes against my previous point, I understand. But yeah, I just want to see that more. And whether that's maybe it's not an issue, because then you look at some of the Munster internationals, I don't know, but it's certainly one to think about, in my opinion.
I got a sense that Leinster were just trying to overcomplicate things at times, and then they were fluffing their lines on a lot of the basics. I think in the first kind of 30 minutes or so, I think they knocked the ball on 10 metres from the line 3 times. And a lot of that is because they're trying to force the ball, move the ball wide too much, and kind of, not looking after the simple basics of the game and trying to move a step beyond it almost too soon.
Yeah, I think there could be something to that, all right. It seemed like they were, certainly in the first half anyway, that they were doing their best when they were keeping it simple, short passes, straight running, and they were winning that gain line. The ruck work was better as well than it was last week. Again, no small part due to Aaron King's performance. And then again, I think the handling improved as it went on. Yeah, there were handling errors throughout from both teams, all right. But they did seem to be able to string more passages of play together, multi-phase, as the game went on. And I think that, to be honest, it looks like what they're trying to do is get to a particular attack game plan with a really short stretch of road in which to do it, and pretty much no pre-season in which to do it. It feels like you're trying to make a 747 take off by the end of your driveway. You know what I mean? I think it might be asking too much of them in such a short period of time.
Did that happen in Munich this week?
Let's not go there. There's a line that could sum it up a little bit, Keen, as well, and that is, as we always say, you have to earn the right to go wide. And I'm not sure Leinster are as reliant on their heavy hitters in the pack as maybe they should be. As in to win those direct carries and to get them as much go forward as they should. Now, don't get me wrong. If Ailbhe Wafer is playing for Leinster, that issue would just fix itself. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's the nature of the game, the nature of the beast. But when you compare to Connacht and Munster in particular, and even Connacht, like they don't have the biggest pack, but they're a lot more keen to hit it up and then set it. Whereas Leinster does feel a little bit more like, well, not sure if we have it, so let's play out the back a bit more. And then because it is only your second game of the season, you've got a little bit of cohesion. And I said, might have slight training issues and whatever, in terms of like their form and things like that when they come back from a break. And I'm just wondering, I'm like, maybe a little bit more of a direct game plan would just but sometimes like rugby is a simple sport. Sometimes it is just win the conditions and everything else sorts itself out. And that's what I'm looking at. And like to Connacht's credit, like we have to talk about them a bit as well. Connacht played well. I thought it was there for them. I genuinely, and I've said it 2 weeks in a row now, I'd like to see this Connacht team fully stacked, like fully stacked, because they're not, and that's kind of the disappointing part, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really talented players in that Connacht squad, and they look like they're just on the precipice of humming, but they're just not quite there. And what's lacking, I don't know. I really think that, maybe another few weeks into a broader competition, you'd see Connacht grow into it and be challenging the likes of Leinster and giving Munster a good hard time. But I think it's such a short window. We're unlikely to see them to really click. Looking at round 3, which is the last of the kind of league fixtures before the finals day, Connacht do have a slim chance of making the final. I think it's a very, very slim chance. It would require them beating a pretty much unstoppable Munster next week, albeit they are at home in the Dexcom. But I think Munster just look to be out of reach for them entirely. But it would also require Ulster beating Leinster as well.
Yeah.
And again, Ulster are at home in Belfast. But I don't know, Cian, for you, is it a bridge too far?
I wouldn't be going down Paddy Powers with the children's allowance anyway. I'll put it that way. I don't really see it happening. It would be an incredible pair of results. But honestly, I'm not sure I can actually see how it would happen shy of a meteor strike or something similar.
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry.
It's, Connacht beating Munster maybe on their day, Leinster losing to Ulster. You never know if one team has a very good day and the other has a really bad day. Both happening on the same day.
Yeah.
I don't see
it. It has happened 4 times to get, that's the thing for Connacht. Like they have to win. Munster probably need to be off colour. Leinster have to be poor. Ulster need to be brilliant. I think there's too many moving parts there. Do you know what? Like, I would have said for Connacht that they have to be targeted in the final. If you told me that, and we'll probably finish on it in a minute, David Parsons wouldn't play a minute of this tournament. Clean and Maloney Batalon and Dermot Bahan haven't played so far. Maybe they played this week. Like they could, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you told me that, I would probably said no. It's a bridge too far for them. Mm-hmm. So this is a chance to just be competitive, have a big game, see what happens. I think Munster too physical for them. I think that's where this is going to be won and lost. Like as much as I look at that Munster back row, even if Maeve doesn't play, like Clodagh, I know she plays second row sometimes, but Evo Flynn not the biggest. Clodagh is a big hitter, but she's not the biggest. Sally Kelly's more of a a grafter, to use that word again. But let's just stick with grafter. Great word. But I still think Munster have just a bit too much of the power stakes, and especially in set piece as well, where Connacht have found it a little bit tricky at times. I don't know how they win this game, but I think a big performance here. I think it's important for three teams to have a big performance here. Don't think it's as important for Munster because they're in the final. They've been in finals before. They've been here before in this footing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the other three teams, you're looking at need to see something, guys. Need to see something.
Yeah. So looking ahead to round 3 then, Caolán, give us your predictions for both matches. First up, Connacht Munster.
Start with the second game first. I'm going to be there, actually. We might discuss that after we hit record. I guess there's any social content. I'm going to go to Munster win. I would like to see Munster rotate a bit more, to be quite honest. That's not me saying that just like for a contest or anything, but because I've seen them, I looked at them now, and I look at their squad. I keep the front row as it is. I'd like to see Anneke Kernan start maybe with Maeve Ogue and give a rest. Maybe move Clodagh back into second row and retake the back row. Would might see Abby Salter-Townsend getting a start. I think Emily Lane's been brilliant, but maybe rotate the half-backs. Probably a week too soon for Ellen Boylan to start. But the backline has been pretty good. I'm just having a quick scan in case there's anyone else. Kate Flannery, would like to see her come back in there as well. Is the other one. I knew there was someone else. So that's what I'd like to see from them. I think they'll win. And I think Leinster will win with a bonus point up in the Affidea? Yeah, Affidea Stadium.
Affidea now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great they added the question mark to the sign on it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's in red as well.
Cian, your predictions. Give us a score.
A score. An actual score. All right. I think it's going to be, even with rotation, which Munster would be foolish not to indulge in, I think it's going to be something like 10-46. I can't see anything barring
that is exactly the number I have.
Away.
That is exactly the number I picked for Connacht Munster. Cian, what's your numbers for Connacht Munster?
It's
sorry,
going
Caolán,
to be...
sorry.
Caolán, there you go.
Sorry, Cian. Sorry, it's okay. You're still our favourite producer. Because I'm going to be there, and because I literally know probably the same amount of players on the Munster team as I do on the Connacht team, I'm going to go with Munster 36, Connacht 21. Connacht, to their credit, have looked like scoring. Looking like scoring has not been an issue for Connacht. It's everything else. And I think they might check. This Munster defence is really, really good, but if Munster rotate, it might be a little bit creaky. I'm now realising, listen, Chloe, defence coach. I don't know if I'm brave enough. I don't know if I'm brave enough to stick at this protection. But yeah, I'll go with well, I actually just realised 36-21 is what it was last week. I'll go 34-21, something similar. I'd like to see more of a game. I'd like to see a proper contest, mainly because I'm there, to be honest.
Gives a figure for Ulster Leinster then?
44-10. I think it'll be one-way traffic. You can't get out of this either, Ailbhe. You'll have to give us prediction numbers as well. You can't just ask the questions. It has to.
10-46 was my Connacht Munster one for Ulster Leinster. I think Ulster will get a score across the whitewash once at least. So I'm going 5-36. But yeah, very much one-way traffic. Cian, for you?
Yeah. I would say you're looking at Leinster probably being 3-4 tries to the better of Ulster comfortably enough. Ulster, probably good for at least one score, maybe. Let's say 2. So let's say 10-32.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all in the same ballpark. I think, and I think it could be a terrible pity that we've had no shock so far in the competition, and I don't think we're going to have any shocks before the end of it. But I suppose you never know. So next week, we're looking at round 3. Ulster are at home to Leinster. That's at 2:30 p.m. and then Connacht face Munster in the Dexcom at 4:30 p.m. Both games are on the TG Carr YouTube channels again, which fair play to TG Carr. They're keeping us all looped in on those games. It's absolutely wonderful to see. Caolán, thanks again for joining us and bringing your absolute impartial insight once again, wearing a red top for the second week in a row.
It's not. It's
Good
actually
man yourself.
maroon. It's more of my traditional Galway colours.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for having me. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, even if I am kind of half afraid that, you know, I might be tipping
Chloe's
the scales a little bit.
Chloe's going to get you.
I'll see her this week. If she wants to say something to me, she can.
Yeah, send me your address afterwards. Send me your address afterwards. I'll post those tweezers on down to you. You'd be grand.
So anyway, round 3 next week. Until then, keep on rocking.